You're no longer aligned with the vision we're building." That's what she said, calmly, surgically, like she was giving a weather report. Alexis Monroe didn't look up from her sleek, glass-topped desk when she dropped the sentence that ended my 16 years at Pinecrest Media Group. I should have seen it coming. The signs had been piling up like snow on the Front Range. Still, nothing prepares you for the moment you're no longer needed. Not because you failed, but because you didn't fit into someone else's plan. My name is Nathan Reid. I led the Western Sales Division of Pinecrest from its Denver office for over a decade and a half. When I took the role, we were a forgotten region on the map, a placeholder in company meetings. By last year, we were generating nearly 60% of Pinecrest's annual revenue, not through algorithms or dashboards, but through old-school work, long drives, firm handshakes, honest conversations, and knowing every editor by name and coffee preference. But Alexis didn't come from publishing. She was a rising star out of Seattle tech, flashy resumes, buzzword decks, consultants in tailored suits. From her first company-wide memo about replatforming our engagement stack, I knew we were on different planets. I kept my head down and delivered. I thought the numbers would shield me. They didn't. The summons came on a Monday. Her assistant, Jordan, knocked twice, looking uncomfortable. "She'd like to see you in the executive suite at 2. I nodded, thanked him, and returned to my call with Edward Hamilton, CEO of Hamilton & Sons Publishing, and more importantly, an old friend. We were finalizing a 5-year, $14 million renewal. It was the kind of deal that only happens because I'd been showing up for their fall catalog since 2008, and because Ed trusted me more than most people in his own boardroom. I wore my best suit to the meeting. Not to impress Alexis, but to honor the moment. 16 years deserved a proper send-off. The executive suite had changed under her tenure. Walls replaced with glass, chairs gone minimalist, art replaced by touchscreen panels. A projection of Pinecrest's digital 2028 roadmap glowed in the background, cold and corporate. She didn't offer a seat. "Nathan, thank you for everything. You've been instrumental to Pinecrest's success," she said, hands folded. "But we're heading into a new chapter, and we need leadership that reflects our digital-first strategy." I said nothing. I'd seen enough deals fall apart to know when pushing back was pointless. She avoided saying I was too old, too analog, too human for the version of Pinecrest she wanted to build. But the subtext hung in the air like the scent of new paint, sterile, sharp, unwelcome. I shook her hand, gave Jordan a tight smile, and walked out. No dramatic exits, no burned bridges, just a quiet closing of a long, loyal chapter. Back at my desk, I packed up my things while the team was at lunch. I left the framed photo of the 2009 regional sales team behind. That one had always belonged to all of us. Out in the parking lot, I slid into my car and stared at the steering wheel. My phone buzzed with 3 missed calls from Edward Hamilton. I hadn't told him yet, but somehow he already knew. Did you know? In the publishing industry, nearly 70% of long-term client retention hinges not on products or prices, but on individual relationships built over time. Algorithms can predict trends, but they still can't replicate trust. And just like that, I realized, they didn't just fire a man, they cut off the very thing holding their empire together. I didn't drive home right away. Instead, I took the long route, winding through old Denver neighborhoods, past the indie bookstores I'd visited when Pinecrest was still a name no one outside the Rockies recognized. My hands stayed loose on the wheel, but my mind was anything but. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sun was low, and my phone had lit up like a Christmas tree. 17 missed calls. Edward Hamilton had tried again. Twice. There were messages from Eleanor Chu at Riverbend Press, Darnell from North Rim Books, even a text from Teresa Langley, who hadn't called me since she sold her publishing house to a corporate group 3 years ago. I didn't reply. Not yet. Catherine, my wife, was out visiting our daughter in Columbus for the week. I was glad for the quiet. I needed space and maybe a little bourbon. I poured myself 2 fingers, sat in the backyard, and let the phone buzz on the patio table. The stars were just beginning to poke through the dusk when I finally answered. Edward didn't waste time on hellos. What the hell happened? He snapped. They're going in a new direction, I said, defaulting to the company line. Bullshit. His voice dropped an octave, tight with disbelief. Nathan, I just met with the new kid. Drew something. He spent 45 minutes showing me engagement metrics and predictive graphs, and not once did he ask about our new historical fiction imprint. You know, the one I told you was make or break for us this year? I leaned back, exhaling slowly. He's following the new model, I said. They want everything data-led now. That's not leadership. That's outsourcing thinking to a spreadsheet. There was a long pause. You are Pinecrest to most of us, he said finally. Do they even understand that? I didn't answer. The truth is, Pinecrest hadn't understood it for a while now. Not since Samuel Pinecrest retired and handed things over to a board of investors more interested in quarterly reports than catalog curation. When I joined, it was still called Pinecrest Literary Partners, just 25 people and a dusty little office near Cherry Creek. Sam interviewed me personally. We don't need another numbers guy, he told me. We need someone who remembers that books are made by people who care about what's between the covers. For 5 years, I built the West region from scratch. I put 80,000 miles on my car visiting presses in Utah, New Mexico, Kansas. I showed up with coffee and listened. I knew names, stories, pain points, not because it was tactical, but because that's what this industry was, or at least what it had been. We grew 400% under my watch. Samuel's son, David, respected the numbers, but he let me lead my way. He understood the human side of this business, even if he didn't always say it. But when cancer took David last year, something shifted. The board grew louder. They brought in Alexis Monroe and started whispering about antiquated methods. Meetings became less about clients and more about platforms, automation, and sales funnels. They started hiring digital engagement strategists and reassigning my accounts without asking. I remember when Edward called me, angry, after being reassigned to someone new. A kid called me this morning, said he was my new point of contact, told me we were moving to a streamlined interface. I asked what the hell that meant, and he just started talking about CRM tools. What's going on over there, Nathan? He'd asked. I told him it was just a reorg, but even then I knew. I just didn't know how to fight a battle waged in a language I didn't speak. Now, as I sat on my back porch, bourbon in hand and stars overhead, something shifted inside me. Not anger, not yet, but clarity. The world Alexis wanted to build at Pinecrest didn't have space for people like me. But that didn't mean the world didn't still need people like me. I picked up my phone and called Rachel Dunham, my attorney. Rachel, I said when she answered, I've got a non-compete clause I need you to look at. There was a pause. They let you go? They did. Another pause. Well, she said, her tone warm but sharp. Maybe that's the best thing that's ever happened to you. I set down my glass. For the first time all day, I smiled. Rachel called 3 days later. I've read through the non-compete, she said, her voice crackling slightly over speakerphone. And I have good news. I sat up straighter in my chair. My home office was still cluttered with unopened boxes from when I used to commute to Pinecrest daily. Now, everything felt different. Emptier, but also somehow cleaner. It's unenforceable, she continued. Too broad in scope, too long in duration, and most importantly, it tries to restrict you from using general knowledge in your field. That won't hold up. So, I can start working again? I asked cautiously. You can, she confirmed. But there's a catch. If you threaten them, financially or reputationally, they'll still try to make your life hell. Even if they lose, they'll drag it out just to watch you bleed legal fees. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. That sounded like Pinecrest's board now, protecting ego over legacy. What if I don't go after any of their clients? I said slowly. What if I just become available? Rachel paused, then chuckled. That's a whole different story. That afternoon, I registered a new entity. Reid Publishing Advisors, LLC. No website, no LinkedIn announcement, no pitch emails or launch party. Just a legal foundation, a name, and an open door. I wasn't looking to build a company. I just wanted to stay close to the work I loved, helping publishers connect with the right people and strategies. The news traveled faster than I expected. 3 days later, Edward Hamilton called again. "I hear you've set up shop," he said without preamble. News gets around. In this business, like wildfire. He didn't waste time. "I need help with our winter catalog strategy. Pinecrest's new team is pushing us toward academic markets, but my gut says we double down on our historical series. I need someone who understands the numbers and the readers." "I'm still figuring things out," I told him. 15,000 for 2 months of strategic guidance. No direct conflict with Pinecrest, just help. It was generous and careful. Edward was always good at navigating the gray areas. "I need to think about it," I said. "Don't take too long," he replied. "We start planning next week." The same night, I got a text from Leo Ramirez, my former assistant director. "Can we meet?" Somewhere off the radar, not the office. We settled on a quiet coffee shop on the edge of Eagle Creek Park. Not exactly a publishing hotspot. Leo arrived 10 minutes early and looked like he hadn't slept in days. He scanned the room before sitting across from me. "It's bad," he said under his breath. "They promoted me to your role, in title only. The real decisions, they're coming from the new digital team." I expected that. "They've reassigned all your legacy accounts. They've implemented a mandatory CRM system that none of the older reps can figure out. 3 people quit last week. Quietly. No goodbyes, just vanished." I stirred my coffee, keeping my expression neutral. "And the clients?" I asked. Leo leaned in. "They're furious. Riverbend Press is threatening to walk. Edward hasn't returned any of their calls. The new team's clueless, talking about interface streamlining and user behavior analytics while ignoring backlists and launch dates." I nodded once, letting the words settle. Leo reached into his coat and slid an envelope across the table. "Updated client list, personal emails, cell numbers, everything." I looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. "I didn't give you this," he said. "We didn't meet today." He stood, glanced over his shoulder, and left. I stared at the envelope for a long time. It was tempting, so tempting, to pick it up, to reach out, to reclaim what I'd built. But I knew better. That was the move Pinecrest was waiting for. They wanted me to act out, to go rogue. It would validate everything they feared, and give them grounds to sue me into oblivion. So I left the envelope on the table, untouched. I walked out into the cool dusk and let the door swing shut behind me. A month passed. I hadn't called a single Pinecrest client. Not directly, not through suggestion, not even with subtle hints. It wasn't restraint, it was clarity. I knew that picking up that envelope from the coffee shop would have been the move they expected, the one that gave them power over my next steps. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Instead, I focused on the edges, independent publishers, academic imprints, small literary agents looking for guidance. People who'd never even been on Pinecrest's radar. It wasn't lucrative, it wasn't flashy, but it felt right. These were people trying to keep literature alive, and I still had something to offer. Then, one afternoon, I got the invitation I never expected. Harold Boyd, chairman of Pinecrest's board, asked to meet. Not at the Pinecrest offices, at his private club, the Summit House, downtown. Out of curiosity more than anything, I said yes. The Summit House was all dark wood, old money, and whispers. I followed a server down a hallway to a private room. Harold was already there, seated with 2 tumblers of scotch on the table. "Thank you for coming, Nathan," he said, gesturing to the empty seat. "I imagine you're not here to offer me my job back," I replied. He gave a thin smile. "Not exactly." I sat. He slid a tumbler toward me. The aroma was smoky, aged. I didn't touch it. "Things at Pinecrest aren't going as expected." I said nothing. "Revenue is down 38% this quarter," he continued. "Client retention has plummeted. The digital initiative Alexis implemented has alienated some of our longest partnerships." "I'm not surprised," I said softly. "Neither are we," he admitted. Alexis's strategies may have worked in tech, but publishing is different. We're beginning to understand that. Too late, perhaps. I waited. Her decision to terminate you wasn't approved by the board. We were notified after it was done, as were other changes, account reassignments, system overhauls, the CRM mandate. We didn't know until clients started calling us. I sat back. So that was the truth. They'd let Alexis run wild, then panicked when the numbers dipped. What are you asking me, Harold? He didn't answer immediately. He looked tired, older than I remembered. We need someone who understands this business, someone the clients trust, someone who can fix what's been broken. I exhaled slowly. So this was it. They wanted me back, not just to clean up the mess, but to undo Alexis's legacy. And once I'd done that, they'd probably push her out. A quiet coup, masked as course correction. I'll consider a consulting arrangement, I said, but I'm not returning to Pinecrest. He raised an eyebrow. Then what are you proposing? I'm building something different, I said. A collective, a consortium of independent publishers who share resources, distribution, data, market insights, but stay independent. No long-term contracts, no corporate micromanagement, just collaboration. Harold's silence stretched. He studied me over the rim of his glass. How many have you spoken to? Not many. Yet. But enough to know there's a hunger for something outside the old model. He nodded slowly. That could change things. For everyone. Exactly. Afterward, I called Rachel again. Laid it all out. You're not violating the non-compete, she said after a long pause. You're not soliciting clients. They're choosing to join a new entity. That's a legally meaningful distinction. And so, within 2 weeks, I filed to establish the Evergreen Literary Network. It wasn't flashy. Just a modest office space in a converted warehouse in Boulder, away from the towers of downtown where Pinecrest and its peers operated. I hired 2 people, a sharp recent college grad named Amira to handle communications, and Glenn Marston, a retired operations manager I'd known for years who wanted back in, so long as there were no PowerPoints, no organizational charts, no titles, no corner offices, just desks, conversations, coffee, and clients who wanted to be heard. By the end of the first month, we had 8 member publishers, then 15, then 23. Somewhere along the way, we became a movement. The New York Times called us the Relationship Revolution in Publishing. Publishers Weekly wrote, while legacy firms chase metrics, Evergreen bets on memory. We didn't set out to challenge Pinecrest, but they gave us a vacuum, and we filled it with what they'd thrown away. Then came a call from Leo. They know what you're doing, he said, and Alexis is furious. Legal's talking action. I haven't violated anything, I told him. I know, but she doesn't care. Tomorrow's the quarterly board meeting. It's going to be ugly. Not my concern anymore, I said. I thought you should know, he added, and hung up. The next day, Pinecrest's stock dropped 17% after the earnings call. I didn't tune in. I was busy in a strategy session with 15 Evergreen members, planning our presence at the Chicago conference. That afternoon, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. Nathan, the voice said. This is Alexis Monroe. There was a pause. Finally, I said. Finally, I said. There was a silence on the other end of the line. Alexis Monroe didn't like being the one who had to reach out. Her voice, when it came, was tightly controlled. The board meeting is still in session. Perhaps you'd care to join us. No, thank you, I said. She didn't respond immediately, so I continued. Have you spoken to your clients? Not your new account managers or your analytics team? You. Have you sat down with Edward Hamilton or Eleanor Chu and asked why they left? Nathan, that's not relevant to... It's the only thing that's relevant, I cut in. They didn't leave because I started something new. They left because you stopped listening, because Pinecrest stopped valuing what mattered. Another pause. I could hear muffled voices in the background, probably the boardroom still buzzing with fallout from the quarterly bloodbath. She didn't speak again, and I didn't wait for her to. I ended the call. That week, Evergreen moved into a larger space, a renovated brick warehouse in the heart of Boulder's Fountain Square. It wasn't corporate, it wasn't polished, but it was ours. 23 member publishers and counting. A waiting list of others from across the Midwest and Pacific Northwest had already reached out. We were no longer an experiment. We were an ecosystem. We didn't have executive offices or floor plans that kept leaders locked behind frosted glass. My desk was near the center, surrounded by the people who made things move. The heartbeat of the place was in shared conversations, not memos. Jacob dropped by that Friday evening, just as the team was packing up. "Everything okay?" he asked, leaning on the doorframe. "Yeah," I said. "Alexis called me." His eyebrows went up. "And?" "She wanted me to join the board meeting." He gave a low whistle. "She's desperate. They all are." "Probably," I nodded. "But I'm not going back." He gave a quiet laugh and looked around our open office. "No, you've built something better." We stood there for a moment, looking out at the people chatting by the coffee machine, the soft clatter of keyboards, the posters of author tours and upcoming catalogs pinned to the bulletin board. This was publishing the way I remembered it. Messy, passionate, personal. Later that evening, as the office emptied out and I sat alone, I thought back to the day Alexis fired me. I remembered the way her words had cut so cleanly, so confidently. "We need leadership aligned with a digital-first future." She hadn't fired me because I was failing. She fired me because I reminded her of the past, a past she thought was dead. But she'd misunderstood something fundamental. Publishing isn't about platforms. It's not about CRMs or dashboards or engagement funnels. Publishing is about people. People trusting people who've earned it. And sometimes getting fired is the best thing that can happen to you. Not because it leads to revenge, but because it gives you the chance to build something more authentic than what you left behind.